What's up and welcome back. In today's Seller Spotlight, I had the privilege of chatting with Hannah Gardner. She's someone who embodies the grit, resilience, and passion that defines true entrepreneurship and who's turned her passion into multiple thriving businesses. Hannah started on Etsy in 2019 and built a 7-figure handmade company. And now she's shaking things up with her latest venture, ProfitTree, an Etsy software designed to keep sellers on top of their finances game. Hannah's journey is raw and real, packed with hard lessons, relentless hustle, and a mindset that refuses to quit. If you're ready to learn from someone who's been through the trenches and come out on top, this one's for you. Let's dive in and meet Ecom Hannah. So let's start with, who is Hannah? Let's pretend I know absolutely nothing about you other than the very little I do know. Yeah.
All right, sweet. Well, hello, I'm Hannah. I am a fellow YouTuber, e-commerce coach, Etsy coach. I've been selling on Etsy, actively selling on Etsy since 2019. And yeah, just documenting that journey similar to you along the way as we're growing these businesses. I've been making YouTube videos. Somewhere in this, I decided I should post about it on YouTube. So I started posting about all of my lessons learned on YouTube, my good, my bad, and everything in between. I am a handmade seller, so I don't do print on demand. I sell physical goods. I've grown one company, my first company, to 7 figures between Etsy, Shopify, and Faire. I exited that company in 2022, and then I started somewhere in this. I decided to open a second company, a family company. So now I have my dad and my sister involved, and that is in the home decor space. And so we've been working on that brand here since that one started at the end of 2021, I want to say. So I'm still actively running that shop with them. Well, I've kind of taken a back seat. They do most of it now, but I guess you could call myself a consultant or whatever on that. And that's also a handmade business as well. And yeah.
Wow.
And then recent days, I launched an Etsy software called ProfitTree. And
Nice.
for anyone listening to this, I would never recommend doing this many things. I actually teach people not to do this. This is like exactly why I tell people don't do what I did, because in reality, I'd say focus at one thing at a time. But yeah, that's kind of who I am.
That's awesome. So 2019 is when you first started on Etsy, or was that a handmade business like separately, or was that all like Etsy right away?
It was Etsy right away. So before that, I was, I graduated college and I was like figuring it out. And I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I was like, how can I, work remotely, work online? And so my first actual venture before e-commerce was media buying. So I was in all these networking groups for like learning how to run ads for people. And like that was such the thing back then. And I made all these friends that were doing Facebook ad agencies because Instagram wasn't really that big. Yeah. So I started actually trying to do media buying for like doctors and like plastic surgeons, because the marketing way, the funnels that you would run or the ads that you would run for like one plastic surgeon would be like fundamentally the same for like another plastic surgeon or dentist or med spa or whatever. And so I ended up in that getting an e-commerce client, and then that e-commerce client referred other e-commerce clients. And so then I ended up getting all these like e-commerce client-based people and learning things on the fly through that media buying agency journey. I learned so much about marketing and photography and funnels and copywriting, because what you learn when you have bad clients or low-level clients in the media buying world is that they come to you to like solve this problem for you, solve this problem for them, which is called traffic, because they think that their problem is traffic, but really they're not even ready for traffic. They need you to solve these like 18 other things before they're even ready for traffic. So Shopify was like kind of, my first learning lesson, but I basically learned inside of other people's brands what not to do, I guess you could say, how to solve those problems first. So my journey was like a little backwards, I guess you could say.
There's more than one ways to get to where we've gotten, right? It's kind of crazy when you say it like that, because like that transcends exactly what you said about, people thinking that traffic is their problem, but it could be the product is the problem, right? If you're not ready with that whole package, then driving traffic to it just becomes an expensive avenue to figure out that you're not ready. Right. And learning inside other people's businesses. I guess that's kind of like how I fell into POD that way too. It was through designing for somebody else's Etsy shop. It's an interesting take. I never really realized, put two and two together that way, because I always was of the mind that I never really had any mentors, right? There was nobody online doing what we're doing. There was no YouTube about Etsy back then. And
but even a business done wrong is teaching you something. So I don't know how that guy's business was, but like, you see, oh, I'll do this better. And it's like, wow, that transcended to me doing it better.
Yeah, you're learning immediately what not to do and how to maybe circumvent some of the crud that they're going through that you're witnessing. So then you've been selling on Etsy, you're still selling on Etsy, I imagine. So what was the transition like from Etsy to Faire, or did you just do it like parallel? Are you still on Faire? Is that still a thing?
So I'm not with the second company. With the first company, my fast fashion jewelry company, that one was a Faire, Shopify, and Etsy brand. So it was just like one brand, umbrella brand with 3 sales channels, basically. That makes sense. So it's all the same brand. It's just different channels.
So did you have mentors then? Like we talk about, learning through other people's businesses. Did you have any mentors? Did you have any go-to, or you were just literally like seeing what mistakes they're making and trying to avoid those?
My very first mentor for Etsy specifically. I mean, I was always on YouTube looking up videos and all that stuff. But the first person I found at the time, the only people I really knew talking about Etsy on YouTube was Starla Moore and this guy, Dave. Dave, add to cart. And Dave's a legend. He's not really active on YouTube anymore, but he's still coaching and everything. And yeah, I reached out to him because he had a jewelry line that was just crushing it at the time. And he hopped on a call with me for free. And I don't think he does this anymore, but I don't know. I reached out to him on YouTube and he literally sat on a call with me for like 4 hours for free. And he changed everything for my business, everything.
Wow.
He gave me like a free store audit. He taught me Etsy ads. I mean, Etsy ads was the key for me, but it was that call that I owe him my life. I talk about him on my YouTube channel. He was like one of those angels from the entrepreneur gods that was like, Hannah, because I had been like depressed for like a year and a half, 2 years, trying to like make something work, anything work. And then Etsy, was like my first like aha success. And then after that call was like my business completely changed. And it was because of that guy, Dave.
That's awesome. I didn't know that about Dave. I actually interviewed him about 2 weeks ago. So that's really cool to know. I had no idea. When you say you're struggling with you had, I'm assuming, multiple failures of other business, or you were just having a really tough go with Etsy specifically? Like, was it?
Limbo stage for me wasn't like Etsy for me. It was like because of all these entrepreneurial failures, lessons, like letdowns, those skills that I acquired during the media buying world, the agency world. And then I was doing high ticket sales at one point for some, like the equivalent of like an Alex Hermosi, like trying to close people. I was doing all these random things. So that was like the limbo for me, struggle. I hated owning an agency. I hated client work. I was bad at client work. I didn't know how to treat you as like a client instead of like a friend. So I would like overdo things for them, not charge and get underpaid for stuff. But Etsy was like the first success. I don't want to say that my shop was like an immediate success, but it was the uptick of it was really fast not because I was lucky. It was because of the 2 years of basically eating, just failing basically, that I acquired all these, eating crap, that I acquired all these skills. So like when people see that video that I posted about my 1 million, like almost $1 million on Etsy, it was like, yeah, that happened, but that was a product of the 2 years of basically like just sitting in like fight or flight for 2 years, anxious as hell, like trying to figure out something, so it wasn't like a immediate thing for me.
Do you remember what it felt like to start seeing your Etsy shop have some kind of momentum and success that way? Because now you're only working for yourself. So like, what was that like when you finally see that uptick and you're like, holy crap, this works?
Yeah. I just remember like, I got like one sale and then all of a sudden I got like 3 sales a day. And then it was just the consistency of it where it's like, there's something that happens. There's a shift that happens in every entrepreneurial journey. So when someone gives you money for something in exchange for something else, but you feel like that exchange for something else was like, not only like it was a worthy transaction, but it was like, oh, I could do this again. So like in the agency world, I was so unsure of myself because I never, made a clear definition of what I was selling as an agency. I made the most amateur agency mistake that everyone can make, which is you want ads? Oh, I can do that for you. Oh, you want copywriting? I can do that. You offer everything. My clients were low level, whatever, but they liked me and they kept wanting, like, even when I like said, I'm done, like they still, not all of them, but some of them were like, hey, can you still work for me? Blah, blah, blah. But I was so not confident in what I was doing. And then that confidence came, that aha moment came when I finally was like seeing like these consistent sales come in and I'm like, I was proud of the product that I was putting out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can see myself doing this again and again and again. And it's repeatable, where agency has that potential as well. I just didn't build the skill set to figure out how to build that engine properly, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. I feel like there's a lot of parallels there. I did a bunch of freelance graphic design in the transition from, leaving the corporate culture to trying to make something work on my own. And I was doing literally everything, and for bargain basement prices, because I just wanted to make as much as possible. I ended up being, a slave to myself that way. Like, getting out of my own way was probably the biggest problem. Had I known what to charge, I probably wouldn't have needed to work 16, 18 hours a day just to kind of, keep everything afloat. It's kind of funny, but it's also great to not have to deal with customers anymore, other than, the odd conversation back and forth. Is that one of the best parts for you about being your own boss, is not having the clients, like doing your own thing, not having to deal with...
Yeah, I mean, I think compared to agency world, yes. I think one of the best parts for me, it's just the freedoms that come with it. Like, entrepreneurship is like this crazy. Have you ever seen the graph where it's like a guy climbing a mountain, and it's like one day you're up and you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And the next day he's like, oh my God, I hate my life. And then that's entrepreneurship in a nutshell. You have like, it's not like you are on this like upward trajectory and it's like this perfect trajectory. It's like, even this has probably been the hardest year of my life for me, like for straight up, even harder than that initial ascent. But the biggest thing I think is like, yeah, you get such thick skin, like you just get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I can feel myself getting stronger, even though I am like this, whatever, but I do see the overall trajectory of going up. Like, you're going up. I don't know if I'm losing you, if this makes sense, but because no one has this visual, but
You totally make sense. You've gotten strong. You're stronger than you were. Like, if you were that same person back then before the Etsy world, or, like doing the agency stuff, you might not be tough enough or resilient enough to be doing what you just did in this past year, right? Or what you're continuing to do. So yeah, it totally makes sense. It's not just about thickening of the skin or getting tougher, but it's like getting callous too, in a good way. Like, you're building that armor, not just the learning how to deal with the stuff, but also half the stuff doesn't matter. And you realize that it's just part of the process, right? Like, that's one of the big ones for me too, was like just trying to worry less about the stuff I couldn't control and treat it as more of a normal part of the process. And once you kind of flip that switch and turn so that it's not a hindrance anymore, it's just part of the process and you have to deal with it. And then it just becomes a lot less of a challenge. It just becomes normal, which for better or for worse, right? Like, yeah,
like entrepreneurship, like spiritually for me, like I wouldn't ask for like this version of Hannah to be any other way. And I wouldn't have been this way, be this way, and like have forced myself to have all these lessons and teachings and all the things about life if I wasn't an entrepreneur. Like, if I was like 9 to 5 working in a regular, like there's nothing wrong with it, but like I have been pushed so far to my limits of being uncomfortable that like now comfortable is uncomfortable for me, because I'm so used to just like constantly, how far can I go? What can I do? And that in its nutshell builds like your character of like who you are, your identity capital. And I feel like for my age, like I feel like my identity capital bucket is so rich because I put myself in like the hardest situations. And this is like going beyond just like my Etsy business. Like mentally, this game has been so hard for me, mentally more than physically. And by constantly going to the darkest place of yourself and then having to overcome it time and time and time again, or trying to, makes you a certain type of resilient person. And I'm not saying I'm perfect or that I have gotten to the apex of this mountain, because I feel like I'm far, far, far from it. But entrepreneurship does that to you, and it's hard. And and you have to wake up every day and like go at it, seeing like with this like bigger, vision and mission in mind, and not, being disciplined enough to keep doing it. And you just don't have that. You don't have that like fire under your ass when you're comfortable. So I don't know, this just turned into a long thing, but hopefully I think that's the best part, is even the hard times, is there's something bigger happening to you as an individual when you're forcing yourself to do things that other people don't want to do consistently.
Totally. When we're faced with these challenges and stuff, like I almost thrive on it. I'm getting used to living outside of my comfort zone, because that is where the growth happens. And if you stay within that comfort zone, our brains are wired to keep us safe. That's why it's called a comfort zone, right? You don't grow and you will not become more resilient, and you won't build that armor, and you won't get to the apex of the mountain and fill your bucket without having had these trials and then overcoming them. Yeah, it's interesting when you say it that way. It's nice to know too that we control everything in terms of that, that financial ceiling, right? And looking at, we're able to zoom out and see a big picture, where in the 9 to 5, they tease you, they dangle that carrot with like, you'll get a promotion here. Well, that promotion also has a ceiling, right? We wear all the hats, but we can get rewarded for all of them too, Come from a place where the better you were at work, the more work they dumped on you.
Exactly. Yeah. You get better at your job, you get more work. Yeah.
It's a tough thing, man. I hope you guys listening get inspired by these conversations, because my whole MO with this whole seller spotlight thing that I'm doing is that I want people to want more out of life. And it's a selfish thing because it's what I want, and I realize I'm saying that, but not everybody does want what I want for them. Mm-hmm. But I have a hard time rationalizing that. I have a hard time coming to terms with that, because like I see like so much potential in everybody and I want them to see it. So I hope you guys that are, stuck in your, I call them comfortable ruts, because like everyone's heard of a comfortable groove, but a comfortable rut to me is when it just seems easier to roll with those punches than to buck yourself out of that kind of rut, right? The crappy job, the crappy relationship, the crappy whatever you got to do, that commute. Maybe the job's good, but if you were remotely working, you'd be way happier, right? So many little things that, people just kind of see and do and deal with on a daily. That said, like, it's not all gravy, right? It's not all awesome. So like, what's one of the worst parts? Is it the fact that you are responsible for everything? Or like, have you built a team now? Like, I know you said you got family involved that are kind of taking the reins there.
Yeah, I think one of the worst parts for me, I need a lot of validation sometimes. And so as an entrepreneur, you don't have a boss saying, hey, you did good today. Hey, you're on the right track. Hey, that choice you made was the right choice for your business. And you're going to get XYZ advance in your revenue, right? Like you don't have that. And so you're kind of relying on a mix of your gut, ignoring half of the things that you tell yourself, and just like the universal green lights that you get from time to time that says, hey, you're on the right track. And that's really hard. It's really hard, especially if you're somebody that needs that validation. And I'm someone that needs that validation. And I think like that's why what you're doing with your community, like your community is amazing, because you're instantly plugged into a bunch of people that are doing the same thing as you. So you can like meet other people. I can't tell you how much time I've spent by myself, like alone, like you're just alone in a room doing stuff by yourself for like weeks, months, sometimes, especially in the beginning. Yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part. But then when you look back at that alone time and all the books you read and how all the things that you listen to or the mentors you have, and you see the green light, like you see the difference it's made in your life and stuff. So it's all good, but it's definitely like the lowest times are when you're like, dang, I am alone in this. I don't know if it's going to work. And that's also the worst thing sometimes is like, and this is what kills most people, is that unknowingness. Like I'm doing all this work, I'm putting all this work, and I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know. Even now, with all my new things that I have going on this year, like I don't know if this is going to work out. I think it's going to work out because of X, Y, and Z, but I don't know if I just wasted 2 years of my life investing in this thing that, and when that happens, you just have to hang on to the basics of how does the universe work, the basics of trusting yourself because your work ethic, the basics of looking at mentors that have been through the same thing as you. And I think that that's one big thing that people should do more of, is get perspective, because you're so in your bubble of what's working or not working, or mostly not working. And you have nothing to compare it to. So you need to go out and go find other people's stories to compare your stories to, because then you'll realize your problems are probably a lot less worse than other people's problems. And that's also something that just always keeps me going. Whose story can I look up today? What entrepreneur, what book can I read about their story that makes me feel better about my situation? So all of that stuff.
Yeah. What makes you feel better by hearing about other people's woes, right?
Right. Yeah, literally.
Well, it's funny, but it's honest, but it's also true, because we think our worst is potentially the worst out there. And it's not to say that it's not valid, right? Our worst is our worst, and it's the worst we've ever known. So it is absolutely valid, but there's always somebody who can put things in perspective for you, and not just saying that always somebody who's got it worse. It's all relative, right? But it is lonely and it does get dark, and it's awesome to be able to have communities. I know you've got your own community too. I don't think I would have been able to kind of continue on the way I've been able to, and continue to do the things that I do on the solopreneur side, like the Etsy and the Amazon and all that stuff. But also, like, I thrive in that community element. I feel like I need it, when I can help somebody and see them get a small victory, that is the most absolutely motivating thing for me. And it gives me, a sense of purpose that I don't even think the Etsy and the Amazons of the world could do. Right? It's kind of nuts that way. Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because people are like, well, if you guys are doing so good, why are you on YouTube? And why do you have these communities that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, if you've never helped somebody get from A to B, and, I don't know how to explain what kind of validation and gratitude and how humbling it can be.
Yeah, that can be tough. Those comments can be tough, especially because it's like, really? All the things I give out for free? But yeah, they just don't know. They just don't know. Or they never built anything before. I don't know. That's the only the only things I can resort that too. But yeah.
That is why, everything that's led you to this point is why you're going to succeed. These last 2 years are not going to be in vain, regardless if the app doesn't work or whatever it is. And I think it will, but you've learned so much that you're going to build a bigger, better one in time eventually anyway, regardless of if this floats or not. And I'm sure it's going to either way. It's a pretty awesome app. We're going to get into it. I'm going to ask you a little bit to break that down and give people insight. And I'm going to have you inside my inner circle membership so you can, explain to everybody. And because a lot of this is, I guess we can segue into that right now too, but you don't know what you don't know. And it's endless amounts of stories I'm seeing, people in different groups and in print on demand communities and online and stuff. And oh my God, after all the fees and this and that, I've made $0 or somebody posting that they've just made their 10,000th sale or they had 10,000 in revenue, but then their profit was $47. And you just worked for free, to not managing the money. So I guess, let us know what your ProfitTree is all about. It's a good segue there too.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me talk about it.
Of course, channel. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I would say one of my biggest issues with my first company was that we knew we were making money, but we didn't know how much, because Etsy makes it kind of impossible without a bookkeeper or Excel sheets to essentially see your real-time profit. And so these tools, I'm not the inventor of automated profit tracking, so they already existed for
You're
Amazon.
Not?
No, I didn't invent this. But I did take concepts that came from Amazon apps and Shopify apps. And I just was oh, no one's doing this for Etsy yet. So let's do it. And so the core issue that we're solving is that, there's two types of accounting. If you're selling physical goods, there's a cash-based accounting and an accrual-based accounting. And to get a holistic health view of your shop performance, you have to be analyzing your books or running your profit and loss statements on something called an accrual basis. And in order to do that, you have to associate every single sale to its cost at the time of the sale. And so, you don't have this issue so much as in print on demand, because at the end of the month, it's a lot easier to get your production costs. But even without ProfitTree for print on demand actually makes it easier as well, because it will do it automatically for you. So you don't have to do it. But for physical goods, it's even more difficult because there's no way to do it. You have to either do it manually one by one, or you're guessing, or you have to take a report and then take that report and sync it to some other report that you already have to get basically a line item on your profit and loss statement called a cost of goods sold. And that is the product that's sold for the last month or the time period that you're analyzing. And so when you don't have your COGS at the end of the month, then you can't calculate properly your profit, because you have your fees, your product costs, and then you have your marketing costs. And all of these are percentages in the holistic pie chart of your top line revenue for the month. And so what ProfitTree does is automates this process of being able to see each piece of the pie of your business. So your marketing cost percentage, your production costs, your product costs, your seller fees, listing fees, merchant fees, all that stuff. So then you can see your profit and how your profit percentage is going up and down over time, or on the listing level, per your listings, or even down to your product level. So you can see on each product you're selling. So for the guy that did $10,000, people are afraid to break even, because really it's okay to break even in the beginning. It is. It's the beginning is not about making money. The beginning is about, do people want what I have to sell? Am I building a product that people want to buy? Right. And then if we validate that, then it's fun. Now it's the fun part, because now we just have to tweak the dial on those pieces of our pie of our business to make it make sense. So once we overcome that first hurdle, right, and then it's okay, we have a business, we know people are buying our stuff, but now let's go ahead and make this thing profitable. And so ProfitTree makes that visual for you to see, is it, maybe I need to stop giving away free shipping and tweak the dial there. Maybe my ad cost percentage is too high, so I need to optimize my ads better, right? If you're selling physical goods where you have control over your product cost is eating so much of my profit, and I need to figure out how to lower my costs, or I need to adjust my sale prices, or stuff like that. It's immediate. You don't have a hard refresh button yet, where basically you would be able to refresh and it would sync. Like basically it syncs every few hours for you, but we're still in the very early stages. So sky's the limit. Everything is possible. Yeah. It's just time and money.
Absolutely.
To develop it. Yep.
That's pretty awesome. I wish I had something like that, because like through COVID, so print on demand was a thing for sure. And then through COVID, with all the supply chain shortages and stuff, we found, my wife and I, that the suppliers so all the warehouses that, that stocked the Gildans and the Bellas and whatnot had inventory. And I knew like a few people in the industry at that point, in the direct to garment industry. He had a line on some used print equipment. Like, so we had a means to print and ship. And the only bottleneck was the actual means to print it ourselves. So we went out and spent tune of like 45, almost 50K on, and renovated the garage, and like the detached garage, because it has to be climate controlled. Like this was like a full on t-shirt printing shop we built, and we did it in like 3 months and got it working just in time for Q4. And we made our money back. We were in the black in like 2 months. And then, all of December, and onward was profit for the next 2 years, because, COVID was a thing, right? But like being able to pivot and doubling down on what you can do, I think is huge. And I think that's what you've done with ProfitTree. But I wish I had been able to manage all of these and see, all my line items, like you're saying, because like there's little things like the 15 cents of pre-treat that we're putting on a shirt before the white ink goes on, little things like that, you don't account for necessarily, right? And then it's the weight that adds weight to the shirt for then when you're shipping in bulk, like we're boxes and boxes of garments. And then you get an electricity bill at the end of the month for the conveyor dryer that we had, but you don't know what that cost breakdown is per item. You just know how much it cost you for the month when you get the bill, right? Like it's not individualized on the daily, things like that. I mean,
wow, I didn't know that about your shop. That's crazy.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Do you still have all that equipment? Are you still?
No. So I went into it with business partner friends at the time, and they ended up buying us out. And then once the world opened up again, my wife and I wanted to, get back to traveling, right? We never wanted to be ultimately landlocked that way anymore. I didn't quit the corporate world 10 years prior to be stuck at home, right? So yes, you can make way more money when you're doing your own thing, as when you're hands-on and you're part of that process. But I also got a taste for, traveling, and it was pretty cool to be able to, open a laptop, process some Etsy orders through Printify or whoever, and then be done with it. Work 3 hours that day, and then it's 9 a.m. Get up at 6, have a beautiful. This was Costa Rica for a month. Have amazing coffee, watching toucans in the mist. Like it sounds like a friggin' movie, but it's like, is this real life, right? So like I was yearning to get back to that. That was like 7 or 8 years ago now, and we both wanted to do that again, right? And not be stuck in the business. It was fun though. I miss that hustle. Like I used to bartend and wait tables, and I miss the hustle. I miss doing things like that. But
for fun still.
It's fun. Yeah, I'd rather help people do it. Learn how to do it. I mean, that to me, like Costa Rica thing was like the I've made it moment, right? Like one of many, and I don't want to say that in a pompous way. This is real life, Was there like an aha moment for you, or a moment that you thought you made it? Because I know there was a moment. First, I guess maybe tell me a moment that you were ready to give up, throw in a towel, and then maybe there was like a equal and opposite flip.
Yeah, I mean, with me, everyone gets drawn to like entrepreneurship for like different reasons, and I circled my brain and back trying to figure out why I'm this way. And so there was an aha moment. My aha moment, I think, for me was like, my whole thing comes back down to, you seek approval from your parents, right? So mine for me was my dad. And anyway, he didn't know, because I started my first company sleeping on my grandma's couch. Like my grandma gave me her spare bedroom to like start my business. She like bought me this cot that I like folded up, and I would like sleep in my office and then move the cot. It was all in grandma's house. And so on paper, it just looked like I was like this chick, like living off of my grandma. Like my closet was like in the trunk of my car. And I was at dinner with my dad one time, and he was like trying to like be like, oh, I know somebody that could give you a job, because I had now been like, almost 2 years in, just like in that figuring it out stage, but I had been starting to see, success. And my dad made that comment, and it just like cut so deep. He didn't realize like I was actually making more money than like him in his career at that point, but he had no idea. When he said that, and I was like, no, it's actually like, I'm good. I don't need a good job. Like I make more money than you, but he had no idea. So
you knew at that point, like you.
Yeah. I was making like $1,000 profit a day at that time in that company. Okay. And had no idea and was like trying to offer me a job. But I think that was like a big, like, it felt, I didn't say that, but I was just like, no, I'm okay. Like, I'm good. Like, I made it. But anyway, the journey, what drives me, and this might sound like not that great, but like, it's not like I hit a goal and I'm like, oh my God, like I made it. For me, it's the feeling like I'm achieving something. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, I've never had like a corporate job. I've never had like a real job. And I've also been working on this, but it's like, it doesn't matter the number, because even at my biggest days, it wasn't like I made it or whatever. Cause then I'm like, it's more about feeling like I'm doing something. Like it's
the journey.
It's the journey of it. And I don't know how to turn it off. I'm working on it. Maybe therapy, but
maybe that, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I feel like my wife and I, like, she knows, like, if I'm anywhere for 12 to 18 months, I start to get an itch. Like, I'm okay. What are we doing next? Where are we going to move to? What are we going to do? What are we, you know, and like, again, it comes back to what you're saying with the parents. Like, one thing I want to ask, was Dad one of your biggest doubters? It sounds like that might have had a hand in your feeling good about knowing what you were doing, right?
My dad was just like when I was little, he did MLM. And so that like introduced me into this world of, this is getting really into like some childhood.
I don't mean to pry.
So my dad was in MLM. And so this is good though, I guess. If anyone knows what MLM is like all about like hype, selling people the dream, And this was back in like the 90s and like the early 2000s when you didn't really have cell phones and Zoom calls and all this stuff. And so I just watched my dad grind. So like it was all about building this business at night so he could quit his corporate job during the day. And he did it for like 10 years. And he was just kind of like never around because he was just doing this thing. And so, but I was so inspired by my dad because I was like, I want to be like that. And, you know, I would watch my dad show the plan. And so the MLM business fundamentally is like not something I would never do. I wouldn't even really consider it like a legitimate business because you can't sell it. But the core teachings of it stuck with me as a kid. And I was like, oh, I want to be just like my dad. And so now here I am years later trying to like achieve everything that like my dad wanted in a way, I guess, because the MLM was all about financial freedom, location freedom, traveling the world, time freedom. And so I was like, when I went to go start my career, if it didn't seem like the opportunity could yield that, I would say no to it. So if it was like a job or like something that kept me stagnant, I was like, I can't do it. I have to have these 3 things because that's what I was like believed was for my kid. And so that's how I always stayed true to like, if I'm going to start a business, it's going to, and even though I didn't really once I had like people working for me, I could be location freedom, I guess. But like, I wasn't, you know, location freedom in the beginning, at least. Even now, I mean, I guess I could, but with that, I wanted my dad's approval, more than anyone. And so and it was kind of crazy because he was the one that put that fire in me initially as a kid. But then when it came down to it, it was that exact thing. It was like, oh, you should get a real job. What are you doing? Like, and I'm sure it's all out of love. Yeah. Like one time he said the job thing twice. I think one time I cried, like straight up, I cried myself to sleep. It hurts. And it was like crazy because it was like you were the one that was like trying to be an entrepreneur, but like the nature of being an MLM is like a wannabe-preneur. You don't own anything. Like it's not a real, but as a kid, I just saw, oh my God, my dad's so inspirational, which he was, like he is. It's just, he wasn't a true entrepreneur. He didn't really understand true risk for reward financially. Like you have to spend money to make money. MLM is all about building a business for free. All those things. Yes.
Yeah. It's a lot, right? It's a lot to unpack. It's funny because like I idolized my dad in kind of the same vein, and not to like compare stories that way, or take away from yours anyway. But like my dad grinded too. He was working hard. He worked, he was a high school teacher, but he was surplused at his job and then we moved to a different province in Canada and got screwed on real estate, right? What was a $12,000 house when he bought it? We sold for 90. They thought they were, it was amazing. But then that was only a deposit because in Ontario, it's like New York City prices. So it was like starting from scratch, doing night school, summer school, all that stuff. And I thought he was working so hard. And I was like, yeah, this is what you have to do in life is grind, grind, grind. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, there's not a lot of time spent on certain things. There's, you want stuff. And then at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know, things happen and you realize that life is short and life is precious and there's so much I want to do and see. And that's where the inspiration or what I want to inspire others to do is like do more, see more, be more, explore more, experience more before time runs out. Yeah. So I don't want to be stuck. Like I am grinding. I know you are too, but like I don't want to be doing this for another 20 years. I want to like rein it in a little and like see more.
It's crazy how like you are so much of like your parents and you see what you don't want of your parents and I don't know, just how it all manifest, but
yeah, grateful for it all, right? Because if I didn't know or watch or see, then I wouldn't know what I want out of life, but also what I don't want to do what they did for the rest of their life. But yeah, it's funny because like, what are you doing? You're quitting your job. You with pension and benefits. What are you, crazy? You're going to sell t-shirts again. What are you doing? Crazy. But then you bought a house from selling t-shirts. You paid off the mortgage from selling what? All of a sudden it's like a real thing.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's the sacrifice you made too, right? You're living with grandma. I watched a bit of your story there. I remember that from a couple of months back, actually. You mentioned you were sleeping on grandma's couch and you were banking every single penny, and you bought a condo recently, I think.
Well, I bought the condo, not recently, like 2020, but I did, and I'm not homeless anymore. Let's just put it that way.
That's awesome. No, but I mean, those are like, incremental moments and it's not incremental, it's a significant moment, but like you did that yourself, right? Like nobody did that for you. Pretty amazing.
Thank you. And I think we both have some daddy issues. So just kidding.
Yeah, for better or for worse, right? It is what it is.
It's all good.
So you're working hard on this right now, and you were talking about, maybe building a team and having some location freedom. Is that in the plans? Is that on the books for you? You strike me as somebody who has to schedule time away to have that time away. I'm not sure if I'm right, but is that true? And are you planning to schedule time away?
So me and my boyfriend both can work remote pretty much now. I mean, yeah, we moved the office, the physical good office, and I don't have to show up. I mean, I don't show up. So we can be remote. Last year, we left the country once a year last year. This year, we haven't done anything. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I am a traveler. I actually set out on this journey, or like my personal Instagram was called Hannah the Homeless, because I wanted to be a digital nomad like you. And I was like, I moved to Colombia and I was like, I'm never coming back to America, F America. And then I came back in like a year. But
wow, I had no idea. That's awesome.
So I was like, my whole goal was like to be this like digital nomad full time and build this whole brand around that. It didn't happen, but I do love traveling. I traveled a lot in college. I mean, I would leave for like 4 months every year since I was like 17 and backpack and stuff. And so I kind of stopped doing that after like the 5th year. And I mean, honestly, that was when I was my brokest too. But it was like, I would save all my money and then I would go spend it. And then I would come back and I would bartend and save all my money. And then I would spend it. But that was like through college as well. So a little bit different, but I don't know. I think my traveling days are definitely not over. I definitely am not a backpacker anymore. I think one of the biggest downfalls of me is that I never had routine. Like I never had schedule. I mean, I told you the book I'm reading now. I actually just posted a video about this. It's probably been the biggest thing that works against me is I have no consistency, no routine, no calendar. I didn't even know how to use a calendar until this year. And so, that's probably been one of the hardest things in business is just learning how to discipline yourself to follow a routine. So I definitely think traveling moving forward is going to be a more scheduled thing. But even when we do travel now, like we're going to Costa Rica, like next week, I'm going to work,
awesome.
We do work and travel, but as far as just like being a little bit more disciplined and not just saying yes to everything, like last year, we would leave like so much, travel so much. And I don't, obviously it's the best ever, but I think I do need a little bit more structure if I want to get to the next place I'm headed for sure. So
bowing my head in shame. Tell us what that book is again too, because I have like a whiteboard, I have the calendar, I have all the things that I'm supposed to do, and then I don't look at them.
It's hard. No, that's the hardest part. So I read this book. Well, my partners on the software made me read this book because they see how like overwhelmed I am in my day because I'm just juggling, so many things at one time. And now the pressure is on more now than ever because, I'm going from like managing just my own e-commerce company to now I have like this tech team that it's a lot of people you're going to let down. And so I knew I was like, I need to change something because this has got to work and I can't let all these people down. So anyway, I read this book. It's called Buy Back Your Time. And even if you have no employees, if you are planning on being a CEO, right, like you should read it because it shows you energetically where your time goes. And so basically what it made me do, it forced me to do this thing called a time energy audit, where you basically have to document every 15 minutes what you're doing in your day. And you see what you're doing and where your time is actually going. And it sounds
you're not doing.
And what you're not doing. And it seems counterintuitive because you're like, oh, I have to stop every 15 minutes and like write down it's actually easier than you think. And so I did it. And then you put like different levels to where that energy is going. So for like a standard like Etsy person, right, like customer service, requires a certain type of energy, spiritual energy, right? Design work is a type of energy, right? And all these different tasks either feed you or deplete you of your energy. And so this 2-hour energy audit, what it forces you to do is highlight the things in green that are the lowest level that take your energy, and highlight the things in yellow and red that are like the highest things that give you energy, that put you in that flow state. For you, it might be like design, and also make you money, right? So the things that make you money are usually the red things that are also feeding you energy. And so the goal as an entrepreneur is to get rid of all of the green things that just suck your time and your energy, right? And to put yourself into the quadrant or into the production. So you have like a production quadrant, you have an investment quadrant, you have an administrative quadrant, and then you have a replacement quadrant. So your production quadrant, just on the high level, is where you want to be in the most hours of your day, because as a CEO, the biggest thing working against you is your time. And when you're switching from task to task, like I was telling you earlier, I feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole. I'm doing customer service one second, I'm answering emails another second, I'm trying to make a YouTube video, I'm reviewing photos over here for the shop. Like I'm doing all these different things, and all of it is a different energy, you know? And when you're switching like that throughout your day, you're actually being way less productive than what you could be if you were strategically planning out your day. And the switching between the tasks is, you know, just to go from like a logical task to a creative task, it takes you a good 20 minutes just to switch your brain. And so, that book just like, whoa. And I'm like, so I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see how that I'm going to get there now. It's just the discipline of doing it.
That's awesome. Yeah. The myth of multitasking, right? And people think that they are great at it. You are not. Hear me. You are not great at it, right? Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. Self-proclaimed multitaskers, you know, like, no, man, you suck at a lot of things. You're good at a lot of things, but when you try to do them all together, you suck at a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from personal experience, right?
Yes. And I do that. We have 50 tabs open. I have 1,000 tabs open, and you're just like working reaction. And another part of this puzzle is not only learning how to make your perfect, they call it like your perfect week, but also a part of the, you know, the greatest downfall of my first company was because of that, exactly what I just explained, not doing that. But then the second part was not having a clear vision on where the company was going, right? Like you just start doing everything, and you have customer service, you have fulfillment, you have new designs, you have new photo shoots, you have all these things, and you don't really know where you're going. You're just working in reaction to your own company, but you don't have a vision of what is the actual goal with all this. And when you don't have a clear vision, that's what keeps you in that default state of just working, just doing stuff. And then you work a 12-hour day and you're like, what did I just accomplish? You don't even know what you just accomplished because there's no clear map of how you're getting to where you're going because you don't know where you're going. And so that was like looking back at my first, you know, the jewelry company, like that killed the company. That was what destroyed it, because how can you lead a team of people when you don't even know where you're going? And so we didn't know where we were going. And so that's what led me to picking up venture 3 and 4 and getting into real estate and Amazon and trying to do all these things, because I was like, I didn't have a clear vision, you know? And so I basically indirectly self-sabotaged my first brand and prematurely exited from it. Was not something to brag about, you know? And if I had the fundamentals, then I would have probably stayed in it longer and actually knew how to hire and fire properly.
It's funny. I don't mean to laugh at it or make light of it or anything like that, but like, I feel like that was up until like 2 or 3 years ago, that was my previous decade, right? It was like getting out of my own way was the biggest pivotal moment where like, what am I doing? Like having that kind of clarity. So like, if you had to give advice to your past self, what would that be? Like, just have a plan?
Yeah, I would have made myself read this book called, there's this book called, Buy Back Your Time is one book. There's another book called The Entrepreneurial Operating System. So even if you are wanting to start a business, it's called EOS. Read that book, because it's going to show you on a high level what an organization looks like. And unfortunately for most CEOs, when they exit their company, sell their company, it's not because they do want to actually, because the relationship they built with their business is so bad, because why they started their business in the first place and the excitement from it, isn't what it turns into 4 years later, because they haven't figured out how to put themselves into the production quadrant, which is what puts them in flow and makes them money, because they get so caught up in the HR duties and the customer and this and all these other things. And so they end up hating this business that they built, which is exactly what happened to me. And I couldn't even stand going into the office because I had to show up to people that I was supposed to lead, and I didn't know how to lead them, you know? And so the point I was trying to make is like, people prematurely exit or sell or whatever, not because the nature of why they built the business was flawed or bad. It's because the relationship they build with it over the years it makes them hate it, what they're doing.
That's a terrible spot to be.
If I had to tell myself anything, I would say, read this book, go hire a mentor, go meet, I don't know, go have a consultation with Dan Martell or any of these, way bigger guys that built bajillion-dollar companies, and read these books, because that would have changed everything for me. When you don't have a clear vision, you procrastinate, you work on only the things that you want to work on, you say yes to other business ventures when you shouldn't, and that's how you end up with 3 Etsy shops when you really should have only had one, right?
One, yeah.
And so that's the biggest downfall. It's that you're not saying no, you're saying yes, and you're almost indirectly sabotaging your business. And there was a part of the book where it explained that. It's like, no one's gonna say I sabotage my business. Like, no one's gonna admit that. But indirectly, I was doing that because I didn't know because I was so unconfident with being a leader. Yeah, that's what I would tell myself. Go read all those books.
It's funny. And, going back to just being an Etsy shop owner, those are transferable skills and points that you're making, right? Because people that try to, do the general store thing with multi-niche shops, especially in the POD world, it's you're trying to make $1 here and you're adding a penny into 1,000 jars. How long is it going to take you to get anything sustainable versus if you have you put the blinders on and have some niche focus, right?
Right.
It's funny because a lot of people, to me, YouTubers especially, and coaches and gurus, whatnot, I hate that word, but people will preach that, general store this, general store that, and you don't need to niche down and stuff. But look at the content they're putting out. It's hyper niched. It's all ultra niched. Why? Because our viewers won't come back if I'm talking about how to grill the perfect hot dog one day and then, how to sell t-shirts on Etsy the other day. If you're there for the Etsy stuff and I start dabbling into a bunch of different things, I'm no longer going to be that authority figure or that voice. I'm no longer that subject matter expert. I'm diluting my own brand, my own self. People are going to be looking for other people putting out consistent content in the same vein, right? So it's funny to me when people preach, just try everything, try this, do this. And meanwhile, but the content they're telling you it's a linear thought.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't even think about it like that. That's a good point. I've just always been a niche store. I guess this general store idea is that came out when it was with the POD stuff because people make.
I guess so. I never really thought about it that way, but that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but 100%, niching down contributes to your brand loyalty, your repeat customer rate, right? When you have a cohesive speaking to one sort of customer avatar. But I do struggle with that question sometimes with the general store stuff because, you can find case study examples of general stores crushing it, but it's on the back end of those sales, are you really building a brand? Are you really setting yourself up for the best case scenario?
I think it's totally doable, but there are also the shops that are going to have 3, 4, 5, 6,000 listings versus, I can have less than 1,000 listings in 4 stores and
right. Okay.
do arguably well with the, the niche shops, right? Yeah. You can command prices, you command, a better customer, a higher quality customer with a higher quality product, which I don't think you can do when you're that spread out. But then they also target the volume game, right? Which I necessarily don't necessarily need, I guess. But lots of ways to win.
That's a really good way to explain it because I always struggled with you really just cleared that up for me because I was always struggling because I'm not a POD. I don't know. So when I would have people ask me that, I never really knew how to answer because you just cleared it up completely. It's a trade-off, 100%. You can go this route, but this is the outcome. You can go this route, and this is the outcome, and that's the answer.
Yeah, I want to work, smarter, not harder. At the end of the day, is how I kind of feel that it is. It's not bad to do that, but you're literally chasing trends. You're chasing seasonality. You're trying to improve. You're trying to implement all the time. And where I'm just trying to do that for a niche market. So I don't have to continually be searching for the new next best thing. Everybody, we found out by osmosis, in the game, but that repeat customer is your brand ambassador is those are the ones that you want. They're the hardest, they're the easiest to have come back when you're niched and branded. And they're the ones who are going to speak volumes about your stuff unsolicited, right? You don't need to pay somebody. They're going to be happy to rep your stuff and show their friends. That's to me is where I like to be. But where can everybody find you? Because this has been awesome. I want to get, other than your YouTube channel, where are you? You got a podcast, you got all kinds of things going on, right? You have a community.
Yeah. I mean, I have my YouTube channel is Ecom Hannah. Profit tracking is ProfitTree.io. Ecom Hannah is my Instagram handle. But yeah, I would just say, all the things that you would ever need to find about me is start with the channel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One last question then. Is there any Q4 tip or advice, one or maybe a couple, up to you, no pressure, where, 1 month away, what would be something that you could say that somebody should implement now or maybe kind of get their head around before moving forward?
I would just say, because consistency is everything. You pick what's realistic for you to achieve and you stick to it, just like going to the gym, right? I would say, I just posted a video on this, it's called Advanced Strategies, which is really just about what I kind of just explained with time blocking. When I'm talking to my students or even my own struggles, core issue that everyone has is focusing and not having a clear vision. And that vision and setting that goal for yourself answers all the questions of where you're going and how you're going to get there. So I would say watch that video that I just posted. It's called Advanced Seller Strategies 2025. And if you haven't done this exercise, the exercise that I'm going to show you in the video, which is setting your goals and then figuring out your perfect week, because before you go out and, I have to make 1,000 listings for Christmas or whatever it is, clearly define what is this end goal? What is my 5-year end goal? What does that look like? What do I look like? What am I doing? How many employees do I have? Do I have no employees? How many hours a week do I work? Where am I living? Set up this goal, this vision for yourself. And then that video will show you how to break it down month by month, quarter by quarter of how you're going to get to that goal. And I would say really if, like I said earlier, if I could tell my younger self anything is I would have taken a step back and built a framework for where I was actually going and then kept myself accountable on that framework. And that would have stopped all this sporadicness of my life, basically. And it's kind of crazy because it's I see it now. I see everything so clearly now of how I went so wrong. And it all stems from that one thing. And it's it's so simple. It's just goal setting. But it's no, wait a second. This is a real thing. This is a real
It's so
thing.
simple, but it's so profound at the same time. It's so necessary. It's, all of the things. And one thing I just want to circle back to what you said is set a goal that's realistic for you no matter what it is and go for it, right?
Yes. The video will show you, right? You do want to have the crazy
stretch goal.
The crazy goal, but then you have to break it down into components of okay, what is realistic? What is the realistic next step? And how do we pull back the layers of what's the truthful first step, right? So we start with the thing that this is what I want my life to look like. And then we break it down year by year. What is the first year? And then we go quarter by quarter. And then we break it down even further than that. Okay, what is next week look like? But then, all the things. Then we get a clear roadmap. And then we have a blind eye to anything else. and if we don't hit our goals, we know why. And there's an accountability part of this where it's we see what happened in these weeks and months when we really audit what we're doing every day. But I would say Q4. Before you do Q4, if you haven't done this, do it, go read the book or watch the video, whatever one comes first.
That's awesome. It's one tip, but it's breaking that down into so many actionable chunks there that I think was super, super profound. So that's awesome. Thank you, Hannah, for taking the time to spend with me. I know time is our most valuable asset, so I truly appreciate yours today. This has been amazing. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. I'll see you on my channel next.
All right.
Alrighty. Bye, guys.